Up here in the car lot today, we're going to start messing around with a project that I've honestly been putting off for near on to 2 years, and that is the four-wheel drive Cadillac Hearse abomination that's been just kind of sitting in the background. I did a video on it a while ago when I first acquired it and set the body on the frame, and when I mean set on the frame, nothing's bolted up. It's literally sitting on some scrap wood. I believe you can see right under here. Yep, yeah, just some driftwood holding all of the hopes and dreams together. For those of you who didn't see that original video, it is a 1969 Cadillac Miller-Meteor hearse sitting on an 89 F-150 long bed extended cab frame. It's four-wheel drive. It has a 302 and a 5-speed, which will probably make it the only four-wheel drive 302 5-speed Cadillac hearse on the planet. The reason I want to start messing around with this early on, we still have a couple months before we actually hit spring breakup, but I want to gravel in the yard this summer, and it'll improve productivity vastly when it's just not a mud hole all year. But I need to move things out of the yard to be able to level everything out and do that. And this is going to be the hardest one to actually move because, like I said, the body isn't actually attached to the frame. Everything's super janky. Steering's not hooked up. The brakes don't work, all of that. So what I really want to do is clearance everything so we can lower the body down and have it actually sitting on the frame. And if nothing else, start to figure out the steering linkage, geometry, and everything so that when you turn the wheel, you can actually steer the thing. Now, all said and done, this is going to sit probably 4 or 5 inches lower than it is currently. So this wheel molding will be kind of here, and it'll look a little closer to stock than it does currently. I like the aggressive four-wheel drive look, but it's not going to be a mud truck. It's just going to be something I drive around for the fun of it. I don't need it this bombastic, and I'm not a huge fan of body lifts where you just see frame rail down the side. First things first, I'll see if the hood's frozen shut. I haven't opened this in a long time. Ugh. This is easy with one hand. Jesus Christ. Ugh. Okay, now you can kind of see what we're working with in here. Being an 89, it of course has EFI. This is one of the big projects we're going to be focusing on in this video, is removing all of that. Now, yes, fuel injection would be absolutely fantastic in something like this. Being four-wheel drive, I could actually drive in the winter and not need to take 3 to 7 business days to warm it up every time I desire to do that. But we're going to run into clearance issues because this has fuel injection on it. It has that super bulky, weird, like 2-piece intake in here, and I can't figure out a way to lower the body of the car down to where I would like it without running into clearance issues there, and I'm not putting a scoop in the hood or anything like that. Plus, we have the whole issue of wiring. I'm going to just get rid of everything I can, restart as simple as possible. Carb intake, 2-barrel, old style distributor, anything else that we might need to convert everything over. It's going to be a little bit more finicky, cold starts and everything, but it might mean that the vehicle actually gets put together instead of continuing to put this off year after year because I don't want to deal with wiring and putting a computer in this. You can see how close that intake is to the heater box on the Cadillac already there. And like I said, this whole thing needs to come down probably 4 or 5 inches. So it's definitely going to be above where the hood would sit. Being that it's a 5-speed and not a E4OD or something like that, I don't need to worry about the transmission operating without a computer. So I think I should be able to get rid of pretty much all of this and rewire everything as simply as possible. Use like a GM 1-wire alternator or something. Otherwise, in terms of clearance and fitment, everything's looking pretty good. The wheelbase was 1 inch different between the Ford and the Cadillac. That's why I chose the extended cab long bed Ford platform. It was also a lot cheaper than finding a Chevy, and most of those you actually had to extend the frame anyway. So it's not going to be a bolt-on solution, but it's going to be a lot simpler with a lot less fabrication theoretically. Even stuff like the fuel fill neck from the truck, get a little bit more hose on that and it'll come right out here on the Cadillac relatively easily. I'll need to figure out a way that we can rig up the rear bumper on here because, as you can see, we overhang the frame rails just a little bit. This is an absolute behemoth of a vehicle, that's for sure, and when it's sitting this high, it makes everything in the yard look tiny. Like the Red Baron there, the International, it is not a small vehicle, but next to this thing, dear God. I would like to use as much of the factory Cadillac equipment as possible, and even some of the wiring maybe, since we're going to be simplifying everything. I have several different Cadillac steering columns, and I'm hoping I can somehow couple that to the Ford steering box. I really got to look into things further and actually start to guesstimate how this is going to work. But would you get a look at this blue interior? When I first bought this car, it was 3 feet under snow. I just saw it from the side of the road. The guy was in his yard. I yelled out an offer to him, and he got with his son, who actually owned the vehicle, and he accepted it. I had no idea it was going to be a bright blue interior, kind of an interesting choice for a hearse. You'd think it would either be black, white, red, something like that. But no, it's blue, and it's in surprisingly good shape, really. The headliner's coming down, of course, but the back of this thing is full of parts and pieces that are going to hopefully make this thing possible. This door alone probably weighs more than a modern Kia. You can see how frosted up everything is under the hood here. We have had an absolutely brutal winter this year. We just got out of the second longest stretch of below zero temperatures in recorded history. And when I say below zero, I'm not talking -5, -8. It was like 35, 45 below for weeks on end. It really sucked. Just a few days ago, I was finally able to get in the yard and dig out all of the vehicles to remember what I own at this point. I hadn't been able to keep up with it previously this winter because of other things going on. Last year, it fell apart. 2025 sucked. 2026, we're going to focus on getting a lot done with these and actually having fun with stuff again. Already starting to lose light, and it's cooling down. It's been about 0 all day. We're dipping below now. But I have the top portion of the intake off. You see all of this wiring that I just have spaghettiing off the front of the car here. That's, a quarter of it maybe. Now I gotta vacuum everything out, make sure nothing goes down the motor as I pull the lower intake. And yeah, you can actually see there's an engine down here now. That's neat. The sun is definitely starting to go down. I have the fuel rails off. I have everything vacuumed out. I'm losing light quickly here. I think I got to take the valve covers off. I have most of the bolts out for the intake. I don't know if the distributor needs to come out or not. The one thing I've noticed is everything is, I believe the technical term is spookily loose. So I don't know if somebody tore this engine down, discovered for one reason or another it was out for the count, threw it back together to try to sell, or if they just couldn't get the truck running properly because like the entire intake is a vacuum leak. Either way, the guy I got it from, he never ran the truck. He owned it just as a parts truck, and I never ran the truck before I tore it apart either. So I guess we're going to see when we get that far what we have sitting here. It's not like 302s are hard to come by. If I had to put another one in here, I'm just not sure how that would really go, seeing as it's sitting on a Cadillac that's 8 feet up in the air right now. My hoist definitely wouldn't do it. And I hate cutting core supports to get engines in and out. I think that looks like shit when you're done. We pretty much lost light now, but I got the intake off. I didn't actually need to take the valve covers off, which was nice. I did have to pop the distributor out. I'm not sure if that was really necessary, but with how deep down in the engine bay this thing is, it was easier to pick the intake straight up instead of trying to weasel it out the back and go around. At least it's looking like something I more or less understand now. Just a Ford small block underneath all of that shit. I'm going to come back up tomorrow and keep taking all of this wiring out, getting it out of the way, because I'm going to use, ideally, the wiring harness of the Cadillac itself for the most part. And this is just all unnecessary now, and it's very much so in the way. It's poking out both wheel wells and stuff. The second we go to actually lower this body down on here, it's going to pinch a lot of stuff, so I'll get that taken care of. It is the following day, a little bit colder this afternoon. I have the heater going in the carport to try to warm up the floor jack that's deciding not to play along, and that's because I need to raise via the frame rail here just a little bit to take tension off of the suspension, because I have most of the wiring out there's just one connector that's pinched between two pieces under there. So I'm hoping I can get enough slack to get that out, and then all of this can be thrown in the back of the hearse and I'll use what I need later on. Last night we did get this all taken apart. It's not the cleanest down there in the valley, but I don't know, there's no sitting water, I guess, so good enough for me. I really should have ran this truck before I tore it apart to put the hearse body on it, but I was kind of in a time crunch to get all of that old sheet metal off because I had to go get the hearse at a very specific point in time when the guy was in town. So things were rushed a little bit. As you can see, everything for the lights and everything for the interior of this thing is still wired up with the original Cadillac wiring harness, and that's what I hope to use for most of this. I did forget that the truck I tore apart was an AC rig. I'm probably going to just use that as an idler, or I'll remove it if I can find a belt that just does the power steering, which I guess I need a pump for. I'm used to dealing with V-belts, not serpentine belts. I'm sure for non-AC trucks they had a different routing. But seeing as the mounting bracket for the AC compressor and power steering pump is one and the same, and it's going to be massive and in the way regardless, I might just keep it the way it is for now for simplicity's sake. One thing I wanted to look at is the shape of the transmission tunnel in here. Before I lower it down any, I think we're going to need to take the seat out, get the carpet out, and cut a section out of the tunnel there for the shifter and everything to come through, because that's kind of close to the floorboard at the moment, and we don't want anything binding up. So I think I kept the panel off the floor of the truck back here. I forget if those were more flat or more rounded off. Oh, where the fuck is it now? There it is. Okay. Okay, so well, yes, it's flatter to go with the contours of the floor pan of the truck. I should be able to pretty much trace that shape into the floorboard of the Cadillac, cut that out, and then be able to use the original shift boot and make everything look as though it is supposed to be in here, more or less. Worst case, I will just cut kind of the face off of this panel here, cut a little smaller of a section out of the tunnel of the Cadillac, and then we just weld this in place, kind of bending it to the new shape. I have a ton of Cadillac hubcaps, thanks primarily to Eddie, who I got the Studebaker station wagons from. We got truckloads of hubcaps and trim and rocker panel molding and everything from that same yard. So I have numerous hubcaps that are the correct era for this car. I'll be able to use stock ones on the back, and then in the front I'll need to cut out the center so that the hub will come through. The radiator from the truck is nowhere close to fitting, and the inlet and outlet are on the wrong side, so I'm going to need to order some cheapo aftermarket Cadillac specific, supposedly radiator, and then fight with finagling hoses around to where everything will work. And back here wrapped in plastic is the rear glass for this back door. And I always found it interesting that there was a handle back here. I guess sometimes your passenger would want to get out. I think you have bigger problems at that point. And I'll give you a quick look at the inner framework for the back section here of the hearse. Everything on these is super overbuilt. Like this floor panel is practically frame rail material, and it's the same way all the way front. The only Cadillac built components on this stop at the firewall as far as I'm aware. Depending on where it lands, we end up cutting that hole in the floor. We might need to get creative bending up a gear shifter, because how this dash is molded here, it was clearly never designed for you to be slamming gears right in this area. So it's probably going to be, I don't know, up, out, and kind of this way. Pay no mind to how janky that is. I didn't get under it, I was just pulling wires. But this is what we were able to get out. This isn't all of it yet. I kept stuff for the charging system as best I could, and everything is still run to the back of the frame because I want to use the intake fuel pump and just put a fuel pressure regulator in front of the carb. But yeah, this is pretty impressive. Almost the entire length of a '69 Cadillac Hearse. Looks like a lot of nonsense to me. I always opt for simplicity over creature comforts because when there's less to go wrong, less to fail, it's cheaper to maintain the vehicle. And in theory, it's more reliable because there are fewer points of possible failure. I'll try to get you a look underneath the rig here. I don't have my good camera. I'm just rocking the cell phone because the GoPro batteries don't appreciate the cold. As you can see, we are sitting on a 4x4 back there. We can see all the floor bracing and just how stout this thing is. There is only one spot of rot I've actually found on the body of this car so far. It's in the front fender below the, behind the rocker molding. Actually, the more I look at it now, everything will clear really well except this kind of partition between where the floor pan meets the cargo area here. That doesn't have a whole lot more. We can lower it. Maybe, I don't know, 2 inches max before it touches the frame rail. Now, we're not notching the frame rail or anything, but we could probably cut a little bit out of that lip and reseal it as best we can just to get a little more clearance. If we're going to have an issue lowering this down, that's probably going to be where it is because everything else looks like it has miles of space. Here in the engine bay now, I still need to get some of that EGR stuff out of the back and plugged off, but we're going to clear the heater box and everything perfectly fine now. And since we're going to a 2-barrel intake, we're going to have a lot of space back there by the firewall. As you can probably see when we look at the fan and we look up at the engine here, the whole front of the car needs to go this way a little bit. And I think the back does as well. Let's see, the overhang there. Yeah, the whole back can go that way too. We should be able to tie in the core support and headlight bucket, the front end of the car, pretty well with where the Ford was. You can see the mounts are still here. I don't know if we would want to build a standoff going to the side or if we would want to go directly through what would be the battery box and the similar area on the side. It is for sure going to be a little finicky getting this resting where we want it. There's going to be a lot of time invested in making sure everything is square or as close as we can get it. Well, that's going to do it for today and this video. I have a little bit of EGR stuff I still got to delete and plug. But to do that, I need to crawl up and literally be one with the engine. And I'd rather do that on a warmer day where I don't have the massive boots and coat and everything on. It'll just make it a little easier. I think the next time you see this car, we're going to be probably stripping the interior so we can cut out the transmission tunnel. And then, I don't know, you might see us try to lower it next video. We'll need to see what the weather allows. I'm kind of stuck right now. Everything I could be working on needs some sort of sealant, some sort of paint, some sort of RTV, and none of that stuff is going to cure because as I'm talking to you, it's already like 2 below at the moment. So it's just all in that limbo where I can't do a whole lot besides disassemble. The hearse, I just thought of that the other day that I could get started and make a bigger mess out of an already pretty big mess. But we made some progress. It looks a lot more like an engine now, and despite being more torn apart than when we started, it seems more doable somehow. As it warms up, and hopefully we have a early spring this year, I need to tear the intake off of the Torino and find a coolant leak in that. We need to remove the flathead 6 from the 49 Cornet in the back there, and then we can start tearing that apart and resealing the engine. And in the carport here, I have the Studebaker Wagonaire, which I really want to make videos on, but again, I can't do body work, I can't reseal the motor. It's just kind of in limbo. I have it all torn down as far as I want to take it. I'll, of course, take the valve covers off, and I'm just regasketing everything I can. And hopefully that'll be good enough because it did run in the other wagon. I would start putting the front clip on this wagon, except I need to do a little bit of body work on the bottom corners on both sides here, and I'm going to just do it quick and dirty, make a patch panel and kind of JV weld it on there. But again, for that to cure, I need it to be a little bit warmer. So we'll get to things when we can get to things, and I have a lot of videos planned out. And like I said, I want this summer to be very progress oriented so I can actually enjoy some of these cars instead of just watching them sit around in the yard. They're cool yard ornaments, but I'd like to be able to actually drive them and start going on trips. I've gotten in with the Old Timer Car Club in town here, and they do a bunch of different runs around the state. They do poker runs, they go out to Delta every now and then, stuff like that, usually within 100 miles of town. But I need something reliable enough I can go on some of those trips with them. The closest is probably going to be the Torino. Second closest Charger, third closest would be the Travelall here. Travelall needs tires. Torino and Charger also need tires, but I have brand new tires sitting on the Belvedere, so that's going to forfeit those if I end up being able to take one of these on a larger trip in the summer. I also need to finish the paint and body work on the Torino, but that's also going to be a summertime ordeal. And then back here I need to finish stripping down the parts station wagon, and then I'll park that down the hill. There's going to be a lot of yard projects going on as well to make the space I have more usable and to expand the space I have at my disposal. I think it was 31, 32 trees marked to be cut down. I'm going to actually make the driveway going down into this lower lot, and it's going to be on an angle. It's going to be pretty soft, but I'll be able to park long-term projects and or parts cars down here, and everything more or less will be shielded from the road. And I'm also going to, you can see some of the green marks on the trees. I'm going to cut some of this out so I can have a row of vehicles paralleling the carport off the side of the cliff there, and that would be completely hidden from the road. And as I said in the opening, I really need to get gravel in here because 8 months out of the year, we're dealing with this, snow and ice and horrible temperatures. And then we have spring breakup, which turns us into a mud hole real quick. We have a little bit during the summer where everything is nice and dry and usable. And then come fall, rainy season, it goes to a mud hole again. So if you're trying to move anything around like an engine hoist, a jack, even the Charger gets stuck in here constantly on what is practically flat ground. It goes up just a little bit there, and we're going to take that out and level everything. But it is a shame how I have this space, but I can't really use it for anything but 2, maybe 3 months out of the year. So that's going to be a big priority this summer. Once it warms up, we will drag the flat Charger out front, drop the transmission in that, swap out torque converters, throw everything back together, and then in theory, this will run in yard drive, and we can focus on isolating the front brakes and making half the system functional so we can safely run it around the yard, up and down the road to get mail, stuff like that. We're going to be putting a lot of work into the Coronet, and I hope to be able to drive this at least back to the guy's yard I bought it from come this fall to give him a ride in it. And then the Belvedere, I really got to find an engine and transmission just to throw in this thing because it was a running and driving car before the guy I got it from plucked the motor. And even the brakes work, so it should be a really quick project if I could find a cheap running gear for it. And then over here, the Petty Charger, I need to find the proper kickdown linkage to work with the 4-barrel thermoquad setup, and which isn't cheap. I've been looking around on eBay, and it's really not cheap. Shipping is the big issue, of course. It's always the big issue living up here. But after that is dealt with, I can drive the car regularly without worrying about hurting the transmission. And I can focus on the front end. It has a horrible shimmy. It needs every bushing, every bearing. Go through that, and then this one should be ready for road trips once again. Pretty much there's a lot to do. There's very little time to get it done. That's why I'm trying to start super early before spring even hits to get ahead of the ball a little bit. We'll see if that actually makes a difference or if I'm just out here freezing my ass off for no reason. I will be putting out videos as frequently as possible. Whenever I have something that's even marginally worth showing you, I will make sure to get it on film. I hope to do a lot of Willet runs come summertime because I have access to a yard that is primarily Studebakers. But there's a couple other odds and ends there I might pick up that I can get a decent number of cars for pretty little investment. So I'm going to stock up on projects. That's why I'm trying to make so much more storage around the outskirts of the pad here so I can load up on that stuff. It's out of the way, the neighbors aren't going to complain, and then as time allows, I can pick one, pull it out of the tree row, and start messing with it. All in all, I think we made decent progress on the hearse this time. I could be wrong, but I think this is the first time I've actually wrenched on the hearse while the body's actually been on the truck frame, because of course I tore the whole truck apart. That was a very hectic situation, and I kind of got burnt out on the project, was worried about making all the wiring work, and then it's just sat in the background of videos for upwards of 2 years now, I think. So let this be your daily reminder to go out, buy an old car, get off the internet, meet some new people, preserve some history, make some memories, and I'll catch you in the next one.